In this video, we're going to take the time to learn about system-wide error handling, page redirecting when we have issues, and ignoring scripts so that pages can't run scriptlets. So in order to get started here, go ahead and grab the resource file JSP noscriptandglobalerrorhandling.war and then load that into your Project Explorer by importing it. That will give you everything we have when we start this code. And we're going to change a couple things as we go, but you can do that as well fairly easily. So let's take a quick look at the pages. Right now we have the same DB stuff. We've added one servlet for simulate exception. This page is going to allow us to simulate some exceptions as they happen. Since we can't do scripting, we can't run them right in the JSP, so we need this, and I'll show you that when we get there. We're going to be looking extensively at the web.xml file when we first start out. We're going to have two different error handling pages. One's going to be action not allowed, and one's going to be error handler. And we're going to have a page that always throws an exception. It's going to be a little different than it used to be. And we have our nav bar modified to give us the exception automatic link, just to give us a little bit of ease. So let's take a look at the web.xml file. Here what you can see is that immediately we have two new things that are already added into the web.xml that we haven't seen before. The first one is a JSP config, and the second one's an error page. So you can look at this and see that JSP config has JSP property group, and inside of there we have our URL pattern, which this one's going to lock down every single JSP page. You could do a single page. You could look at locking down a folder using URL patterns if you didn't want every page to be locked down from scripting. Right now we're going to lock down every single JSP page, and we're going to set the scripting invalid toggle to true, which means it can't script. The error page is a very simple, straightforward error page directive that allows us to handle the specific error codes. So here we're handling error code 404, which is page not found, and we're redirecting to errorhandler.jsp. If we look at error handler, we're going to keep the isError page true, and then we're going to have to remove the scripting that we were doing before. So what I've done is use an expression language statement to print out the exception message. So we don't know about expression languages yet, and we won't learn about those until the next section. But this is just a good look at it, and you can trust that this will actually print out the exception message. Our list cities page is still going to have a script in it. So this is going to be a huge problem when we try to run this. As soon as we hit this point where we have scripts, we have a scripting comment and we have a scripts. So those are going to cause problems. And what's going to happen is that's going to create an internal server error 500. Then supposedly we want to redirect to the action not allowed so that the user doesn't see a big mess. Now we don't have that turned on yet in our web.xml. So let's run it the way it is and see where we're at. Let's go ahead and try to start up from index. In case you're running multiple projects at this point, because we're importing more and more as we go, and you're running out of resources, make sure if you have multiple projects that are configured into the server, you can actually remove the ones we're not looking at. You don't need them. We just need the one that we're looking at here, which is no script and error handling. So we'll go ahead and restart the server here. And this will pull up our wonderful, awesome website, which has home, cities, countries, and exception. So the home page, of course, is the same. Now, cities was the page that was going to contain the scripts. And so this is where we're going to have the error. So when we run this, we do see that we, in fact, do get an exception report for HTTP status 500. And it basically says scripting elements, expression, etc., so on and so forth, are disallowed here. And it prints out all the information about the exception and all the stuff that you certainly don't want the users to see. This is not a friendly screen for them, plus it gives them more information you'd ever want them to know. So what we can do to prevent that is we can actually modify our web.xml file. But before we do that, let's take a look at our other error handling. So countries was a page that we still haven't written, list countries. So if we hit that, at least our error handling is still working for the 404. So that's redirecting, and we don't have anything on list countries, so there's no directive set. Our list cities is always going to remain a script, so we want to keep that. But what we really wanted was our action not allowed page to print out this information. And it has the same exception message here in case we encounter an exception. So what we need to do is just turn that on in the web.xml file. So we're going to actually direct any error code 500s to the action not allowed page and print out the exception as well. Now here's the thing. You could redirect to the same page, which we'll see in later sections or later videos, or you could redirect to different pages as we've done here. So if an error 500 happens, we're actually going to go to a different page and handle this differently. The action not allowed page, of course, again, is just going to have that expression because we can't do scripting, so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Let's go back to our index page now and run. And we'll finish this up, restart our server. And if you want, you can always toggle, always use this server for this project to save some of these steps as well. So let's once again verify 404 is still working. Now let's run our cities, and you can see, boom, it said something has gone wrong with the system. The incident has been logged for research purposes. Please try again. There's our list cities etc. This was what was displayed on that page. It's a little more friendly to see here. Obviously, still probably don't want to show all that to the user, but for our purposes, it's really great. We could log that. The last thing then is we wanted to actually handle errors on specific error instances. On the page always throws exception, what I've done is removed all the scripting, of course, because we can't have it. And actually, we can't even put comments around the scripting. If you tried to put comments around the scripting and run script blocks, you'll note they still seem to be valid, and they are. It will actually note that that comment is there, but it will still try to run that script and your page won't work the way you expected. And that's even the case if you try to use a scripting comment, it will still be a problem. We'll still not be able to run this page because the scripting is invalid and those comments are considered part of that. So what we'll do is actually just remove all of that. And if you wanted to see what that page said before, you could go back and look at our previous lesson. But essentially, it was just checking for that parameter and then throwing the exception. So what we're going to do instead is use this standard action, JSP forward, which we haven't seen, but this is a really straightforward action. It allows us to forward a page to wherever we want to go. So now we're moving forward to simulateException.do servlet. Now I want to note right here while we're on this, you can do parameters, and we'll look at that in more detail later. But for right now, we don't have any parameters, so we're just going to forward straight on to simulate exception. So in simulate exception, we'll handle this in the get. We're just forwarding, we're not posting. So here we have int I is 10, int j is 0, int k is I divided by j. Of course, this is an exception. I have this here just so the code won't yell at me about having an unused variable, but basically we know that it'll never get past int k equals I divided by j. So once again, we're in a servlet now. Obviously, there's no directive in the servlet for forwarding to the page, so we don't have to set an error page. Everything's global at this point, but it will still be handled in our error handler. So let's go ahead and run our index one last time and make sure we save our changes and go ahead and finish that. And this time we'll just throw the exception. And what we can see is it did handle it correctly, an error has occurred, and it printed out that we tried to divide by 0 was our exception that was handled.